Oh, you know where we're at. We're at the Fastport Studios on NOLA, hanging out with Jimmy, Trina, and Madison. Oh, and who's hanging out with us? Collin Long!
Washington Trucking Week is in the house with all those sick people that rally around him. Collin Long has returned. He said, the last Washington Trucking Week we did was with Bryce Mungen, and I was like, well, I'm looking at it going like, wait a minute, on the old platform, I'm like, I called up Collin Long and I said, hey, man, didn't you want to be the last guy? And he goes, I want to be the first guy.
Hey,
yeah,
my man.
Collin Long is in the house. Washington Trucking Week has returned. Hey, man, welcome to the first edition of Washington Trucking Week on its new day, Thursday, on hashtag RGR, Roger That, or as Dre likes to say, Big Fat Roger That. Welcome to the show, man. How you been?
Pretty good. I'm enjoying this Thursday because some Friday mornings I'm a little rough. Just talking to you early on a Thursday is probably better for everybody.
Oh, I kind of like it. I'm actually really thrilled to hear that. Can I tell you something, by the way? And I'm letting people kind of know. You can find us at radionemo.com. You hit the play button. You can listen to it. We got all kinds of crazy chat going on over at YouTube, where we have gone from, I think we had 300 subscribers 2 weeks ago. We're now at 821 and rising, and I know the algorithms change at 1,000. We should accelerate there. Thousands of listeners on Facebook, all kinds of great stuff going on. As soon as we can figure out a way to change the name of the page on Facebook from the Dave Nemo Show to Radio Nemo, we're going to do that, but we've been really excited and thrilled. Talked to our mutual friend, Jamie Jones. She's over the moon about all this stuff, and I'm so thrilled to have you here, brother. I'm glad to hear that Thursday is the new Friday as far as Washington Trucking Week is concerned. What's going on over in the Magic City?
Now, I should clarify that by Friday, I'm just worn out. I'm not doing much extracurricular after work on a Thursday. Don't get me wrong. I'm just exhausted by Friday. So Thursday, you're getting me in my prime because Wednesday's usually the biggest, busiest day on Capitol Hill, and by Thursday we're kind of decompressing and taking account for everything that went down. This has been a quiet week actually, but today there's going to be some big news. So we've got some things to chat about today, that's for sure.
Yeah, so let's kind of jump right in because it's gonna be wild and woolly here this morning. I will put this in the way that you put it to me. An unnecessary motor carrier fee was left out of the Senate budget proposal. Go on.
Yeah. We weren't pleased when this new program was included in the House reconciliation bill. Basically, it's what the broker industry has been pushing for a while. Sometimes it's been called a hiring standard. Basically, they're looking for coverage to ensure that when they contract with a motor carrier, that motor carrier is fully vetted and clear to operate by DOT. And, I get their interest in doing that. There's no doubt about it. Our problem was that for our members to access that information in this new program, they would have had to pay an annual fee of $100, and that was just a bridge too far for us. And, we've been relatively neutral on the standalone bill that would authorize this program because, again, if it's capable of weeding out bad actors from the motor carrier industry, we're all for it. So just don't include that extra fee on it. And I think that's ultimately what undid it in the Senate, because the Senate has some rules that they have to play by that the House doesn't necessarily have to do. And I think as the Senate began progressing with their reconciliation package, they realized this probably wouldn't pass muster. This is an initiative that has to wait for something like a highway bill to be authorized. And I think the conversations about this provision certainly aren't over. The broker industry is going to want this to be included in a highway bill, and we're eager to have those conversations. And we think, if brokers are willing to pay the fee to have that access and to maintain the program, that's fine. Go ahead. It's providing them liability coverage, but just don't require our members to pay another fee to gather access to information that basically tells them, yeah, you're clear to operate. They already know that. They've gone through the process of being cleared, so they don't need another federal program to identify it. But we're not done with this. We're pleased that the Senate, did not include the new program, the new fee on truckers in their reconciliation package, but that doesn't mean the conversation's over. And I think this will be a key talking point, a key discussion point in the highway bill. And hopefully we get to a resolution that satisfies the brokers who want the coverage, and certainly our members who aren't opposed to providing that coverage, just don't want to pay for it. I think OOIDA as an organization is hopeful that's where we'll end up in the highway bill when it's released later this year.
Let me ask you something. I mean, basically, if I'm hearing you correctly, and you can correct me if I'm not hearing you correctly, is you're saying the program itself, terrific. The idea is like, let's make this a zero-sum game. Then let's eliminate some other fees that people are paying to do the exact same thing at the state level and in other places. A lot of the legitimate people have already done their legitimate business in regards to how they've handled this, and now you're asking the legitimate actors once again to pay to get rid of people that should already have been gotten rid of. Did I get any of that right?
Yeah, pretty much. And, there is more detail in this. Excuse me, I have a frog in my throat today. But there is more detail in this because the brokers have been pursuing this for years. And frankly, we've been negotiating with them, trying to get to a point where we're comfortable with the language and it still satisfies their needs. And I think we got there recently. Representative Garrett Graves, if you remember him from the great state of Louisiana, which I'm sure you do.
Oh, yeah.
He had a bill last year that got our blessing. Unfortunately, what the House included in their reconciliation package wasn't the framework from that bill that we negotiated with the brokers. It was a version from previous years that hadn't gone through the negotiation process. So we weren't even really pleased with the language that was included in the House bill. And frankly, I think they did that deliberately. I mean, they knew that they had to be very careful about including language that would be perceived as authorizing on a bill like reconciliation, where it has to be about incoming revenue and outgoing disbursement.
I hate to do this to you, Collin. I hate to do it to you.
Yeah.
You ready? A lot of people hear that word. They hear it on, their favorite, what I call propaganda channel. Everybody listens to their favorite propaganda channel, as opposed to the propaganda-free reality that is Road Gang Radio. Everybody hears the term reconciliation and goes, I know what that means. I'm a constitutional expert, despite the fact that I've never gone to law school. Explain what reconciliation is. Can we do that?
Yeah. I'll try to do it easily because it is very difficult to comprehend and understand. But basically, Congress can go back, and this tends to happen when there's a new administration with a Congress of the same party, can go back and basically edit budgets and edit federal spending and revenue generation. And that's what they're doing in order to extend the 2017 tax provisions that the Republican House passed under the first Trump administration. They're basically going back and saying, we want to extend those, so we have to work with the numbers to make it happen. And doing this requires basically every committee in Congress to play a role. And in the Commerce Committee over in the Senate, you remember they have jurisdiction over trucking. So their piece of the puzzle isn't necessarily going to be as big or dramatic or changing as other committees are. But they're going to try and find savings to extend certain tax benefits that benefited folks in the trucking industry, too, I mean, if we're being honest. So we're not opposed to reconciliation by any stretch of the imagination. There were just some items we wanted to see included and some items we didn't want to see included, and this one is one that we did not want to see included. We want this to remain in the highway bill conversation, and frankly, looking at what the Senate is doing by not including it, I think there's a likelihood that's going to happen. So we're certainly pleased with that, and we're eager to be a part of the conversation moving forward to get to a point, again, where everyone's satisfied. The brokers are satisfied, motor carriers are satisfied, and Congress can say, we're passing legislation that seems to work for everyone in trucking, which is, as we always say, an indication of good policy.
Yeah, and, like I said, it's important people to understand what reconciliation is, too, for another reason, is the fact that it's an ongoing process. It means that you can't codify something permanently. You mean it means exactly what the word means. We've got to reconcile this.
Yeah.
Got to make this work.
More eloquent than me.
Well, actually, the thing I always say about reconciliation is basically, it's we can't do this permanently because we're not going to get this through, but we can do it temporarily and then come back and revisit it. I want to pivot here. Unless, of course, you got anything more to say about this. But this is much more complicated and it is a minefield, so you can step as gingerly as you want to. The President of the United States is not happy with the fourth largest economy in the world. By the way, California just passed Germany as the fourth largest economy in the world. It's a monster. Like I said, there are actually three capitals in the United States of America: Washington, D.C., Austin, Texas, and Sacramento, California.
Pretty accurate.
Yeah, the Prez don't like the fourth largest economy in the world, and he's taken aim at him with the EV mandate. And a lot of people it makes very happy. And like I said, I got some problems with it as well too. But go ahead and talk about this.
Yeah, from our perspective, we're not always keen on what the great state of California is doing in the trucking industry. And
No, you haven't made that clear.
And I'll reiterate this. I mean, we're gonna weigh in on environmental regulations right now, but that statement goes across issue scopes, and it goes well beyond environmental issues. I mean, don't forget we're the last one standing fighting AB5 out in California, so we don't even like what they do on a lot of labor issues,
right,
and independent contractor issues as well. But this one is kind of our old foe, which is environmental issues. And frankly, I mean, if you go back in time, California stepped out on environmental issues because they had big environmental problems. I mean, smog was covering Southern California, and they needed to clean it up. And they, unfortunately, as California often does, they go too far. And I think we're still seeing them go too far. And the Trump administration is kind of slapping their hands down and using the full force of the federal government to prevent California from going beyond where it should, and basically charting a course for the entire country on EVs. And we've stood with members of Congress who introduced legislation to prevent California from going too far on EVs, and we stand with the Trump administration in their latest efforts to roll back a lot of these EV requirements. And when we're talking about heavy vehicles, if you remember, California wanted to force the trucking industry to start adopting electric vehicle technology at a pace we thought was pretty darn unreasonable and frankly unrealistic. I mean, they wanted to transition the heavy vehicle industry in the state to all EVs by, I believe it was 2035, and the problem with that is where California starts, others pick up. I mean, the whole West Coast will embrace it. States over in the Eastern Seaboard will embrace it, and pretty soon you have a new national standard. And I think that's where the Trump administration appropriately stepped in and said, enough is enough. I mean, we set vehicle standards because vehicles are very much within the purview of federal policies.
Interstate commerce. Interstate commerce. And by the way, exactly. I want to point out something that Collin pointed out that I think is actually brilliant for this conversation. This is often important to remember, is that the smog problem, which you talked about, it was so bad in the 70s that it was beginning to poison the rest of the nation. That's something that people need to remember, too, that California had to take on smog not just for their own quality of air. I mean, there's a great running joke that used to land in Los Angeles during Christmas in the 70s, and you could see red and green on the smog banks as you came in at night from all of the Christmas lights underneath them. That's the absolute truth. And the country was getting poisoned by it, so it behooved California to act in that way. But you make a really good point, too, because the fact of the matter is, I pointed out the fact that it's fourth largest economy in the world, which means if it adopts laws like AB5, and if it adapts mandates for emissions, mandates for electric vehicles, and all that kind of stuff, it means that if you are a neighboring state or you're interstate commerce and you want access to that particular market, they can actually dictate the rules for how you can enter and get in and out of the state. And, of course, the federal government's counter-argument is, we appreciate where you're coming from and you do what you got to do to keep your house clean. But at the end of the day, my brothers and sisters, those interstates, those things that have the I-5 and the I-10 and all those things, there's an I on them. It isn't a state road; it's an interstate road, and it unifies the country. And that's where California has got to. The other problem I have, and I'd love your take on this. You can also say I got nothing. I say nothing. Is the fact that California, when it imposed those mandates, never went to anybody and said, "Make us a counteroffer." They didn't. And I realize. Look, and I'm sorry, I'm getting on my high horse here, but you're on your soapbox, so we can see eye to eye on this.
Yeah.
I want to make sure people will counter and say, well, how can you ever negotiate with corporate overlords? We learned that the hard way. But what I would say is there was never any attempt to get people who do have a concern about the quality of the air, do have a concern about the quality of the country, but also believe that, the engine that makes money is money, who were never consulted. There was never a sense of, okay, well, tell us how to get there and do this in a way that doesn't disrupt jobs and kill small businesses. Is that fair?
Yeah, totally fair. And I think that's why we talk about these requirements coming out of California as being unrealistic, because our members don't see a future for them driving EVs. I mean, where's the infrastructure? And certainly California wasn't addressing that. They were just leading with requirements and hoping that the infrastructure was backfilled.
What is it? If you buy it, we will build.
Exactly. That's a very precarious position for a lot of small business truckers who still remain in California or who want to access California. I mean, they need dependability, they need reliability, and to front load things with a heavy-handed mandate, that makes a lot of small business carriers really worried about their future in the state or accessing the state. So we're very pleased. I sound like a broken record, but we're very pleased that folks like Deb Fischer, the senator from Nebraska, said enough is enough. Like let's pull back on these mandates. And I think it's important to note, like, what we're talking about here on EV requirements and environmental regs coming out of California involves waivers. They get waivers from the EPA to go above and beyond what the federal guidelines are. And I think we've seen a lot of back and forth as administrations switch from red to blue of whether or not California is going to be able to run with those waivers. And the first Trump administration pulled them back. Biden gave them the green light. Now Trump is back in office, and we're pulling back on them. And that creates a lot of uncertainty for members operating in California and domiciling California. I mean, they don't know which way is up after all the switch in administrations and the switches in policy. So we're hopeful that this kind of remains permanent and California isn't given another opportunity to go beyond federal policy, because really we firmly believe when it comes to interstate commerce, the federal government is the one who should be determining what goes on, not these independent states who I mean, and I'm going to say it again, who are on the right path. I mean, cleaning up air in California is not something anyone's going to oppose, but there's a responsible and reasonable way to go about doing it. And we just think California went too far, and the federal government's slapping their hands. And we find that appropriate.
Well, let me kind of
get. The president's going to sign some of these into law.
Let me go back to 1932. I know, what the heck is Jimmy doing? I do this all the darn time, and you just kind of thank you so much for always rolling with it on the previous platform and now today. A lot of people don't know this. Franklin Roosevelt is elected in 1932 to the presidency of the United States, and one of the reasons why he is elected, along with the fact that nobody wanted Hoover to ever be president ever again for the rest of his life, for the rest of the century, but the other big reason was that he was able to ameliorate the symptoms of the Depression, because a lot of the stuff that ends up being the New Deal gets test run in New York. They were already test running that stuff in New York. When we say waiver, I want people to stop thinking about it as a waiver and to think about it as a pilot program. And when administrations, whether it's a Republican administration or a Democratic administration, come in and allow people to exceed federal authority, to exceed federal mandates, and to go above and beyond that, what those administrations are doing is they're basically saying, we want to run this nationwide. We're going to test it out in California, see how well it plays, and then if it plays well, or if we see any kind of successful results and we like what we're seeing, we're going to make it nationwide because we're going to use California as the example. In the same way that there were deregulations in the oil industry that have happened, and they only were exclusive to Texas, and other administrations have said, you see, they work. We're going to do this again. I mean, part of the big explosion that happens in Pennsylvania with natural gas happens because of what happens in Louisiana and Texas getting their waivers. Waivers are essentially pilot programs. They are warm-ups for what is about to come nationwide from an administration or a party. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I'll go beyond waivers. And I mean, I think there's probably people who would say, oh, OOIDA's talking out of both sides of their mouth on this because, we support restroom access. That has its roots in a state legislation in the state of Washington. We want data queue to be more transparent and accountable. And that's got roots in states like Arizona and Minnesota who are doing it right. And we want to apply those policies on the national level. But, I think there is a distinction between California setting unrealistic EV mandates and hoping that everything else falls into place with their heavy-handed approach, and things like what's going on in Washington and Arizona, where we can demonstrate that these can be upheld and they can be followed through on, and they're reasonable and they're practical.
I don't think you are talking on both sides of your mouth. I'm actually going to defend you on this. I'm going to defend you on this because all I was suggesting, by the way, guys, is when a waiver is issued like this, what it is, it's an attempt to experiment with a policy. The problem with the California waiver is the fact that it's the problem with it's the problem with toll roads. It's the problem with a whole bunch of stuff is that you have a program that you want somebody else to pay for. And in the idea that you're absolutely right. If you want an EV environment, then you have to build EV infrastructure. You have to create all kinds of incentives in regards to tax breaks, which means that other people have to pay taxes. And then essentially what they've done here is that you got to go get an EV. You got to go get this stuff that's been mandated to you. Oh, and by the way, you got to pay for all of it. And we're not going to ask the very citizens who are going to benefit from this to pay a nickel to make sure it happens. The problem with this is the fact that it, once again, as you guys have often said, it turns a small trucking business into a piggy bank, which they then shatter to kind of plunder for money to pay for programs that benefit other people. That's my issue. That's my biggest. Yeah. Sorry.
I think you just said it better than I have this conversation, so thank you.
Yo, I wouldn't have thought about it if you hadn't talked about it, though. I'm going to put that out there right now.
Thanks.
But, okay.
Don't come for my job.
So, no, I don't, believe me. Knowing what you do, brother, I don't want any part of it. I don't want to feel rough on Friday morning, given the fact of what's happening. I do want to talk a little bit about, since it is our first show here, and I've danced around talking about this, and you might not know the exact numbers. The Transportation and Infrastructure Committee on Capitol Hill is a big one, right? I mean, it's one that a lot of people want to sit on. Is it 18 or 23 members? I never get that number right. I don't remember.
Oh, it's even more than that. I think they're in the 70s.
Oh, wow. I'm thinking about a subcommittee now. I'm thinking about a subcommittee. I know I am now. Oh, my God. It's 70 people? Wow.
Even the Highways and Transit Subcommittee is larger than most House committees because everyone wants to be on it in a highway bill year. Yeah, the T&I committee is big, and it gives us a lot of work to do to educate all of its members about transportation. But I think you've seen they're pretty darn good. The House T&I committee is on both sides of the aisle a pretty good champion of small business trucking. So we've been working on that for a long time, but frankly, a lot of their members have been very accommodating to our needs. So bravo to House T&I. I mean, don't get me wrong, like everything in Washington, there are times we have to nip them on things like this new program that they tried to authorize through the reconciliation package. But that doesn't mean we don't work with them and appreciate all of their work throughout the year, because we are entering a highway bill reauthorization, and I'm pretty confident the T&I committee is going to produce a lot of really good policies for our members by the time they release the bill.
So 70 members, I'm willing to bet I would put good money that there is at least one representative from each state on that committee.
Almost, yeah, you're almost right.
Yeah, because it seems to me that you would want somebody on there if you're in a particular state, given the fact that the Republicans removed earmarks, that kind of stuff, that you want to be on that committee to make sure that you can actually get your state, people in your state, a piece of that particular action. If I was going to ask you, and this is a lawful neutral question, if we're going to put it in D&D terms, who are, along with Graves, the most important people on the committee? Seniority-wise. I don't mean like who are cool and who's not cool. Yeah, you get what I'm saying.
The ranking member, Rick Larson from Washington, the lead Democrat, is certainly a power player. A lot of policy coming out of the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee is bipartisan, which requires Democratic support, and Rick Larson's the shepherd managing his flock over there, and he does a great job. On the Republican side, I mean, our good friend Brian Babin from Texas, if you remember him from the ELD battle days, has become a pretty senior member over at T&I over the years.
Wow, I feel old now. I feel really old now. When did he become a senior member? Oh, my God. Oh, my God. Now I know why my beard is so gray. You got gray in your beard, don't you? No, you're still brown.
I do. Thanks for pointing it out.
You're welcome. I'll be here all week. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, more and more by the day. But another one is Mike Bost. I mean, a great champion for small business truckers.
Big one.
If you look at the dais when you're at the T&I committee where the panelists sit, he's getting to the top, and we're certainly thrilled with that as well. But, you know, we've got up and down the seniority list at the T&I committee on both sides of the aisle. We've got really dependable members who help us all the time with policy. Even like Mike Collins out of Georgia, a relatively junior member of the committee, but he's got a trucking background. He's become one of our best champions on Capitol Hill, and that relationship's only getting stronger. And truthfully, I mean, we don't see eye to eye with these guys on everything. That's never going to happen. But by and large, I mean, they're doing yeoman's work, making sure small business truckers are represented on the committee, and our priorities are being discussed in advance. So we're really happy with the T&I committee this year. They've done great work.
Is Angie Craig on that committee?
No,
I'm surprised. Well, that's odd, but go ahead.
She's been around long enough and become influential enough that she's on an A committee now. So she's doing work elsewhere, but that doesn't mean she's not focused on transportation issues. She's still a leading advocate for truck parking, a great champion for us. I think she's running for Senate in Minnesota, which would certainly be welcome for us to have someone who is very comfortable with our issues and a champion on issues finding a seat in the upper chamber. And that's by no means an endorsement, but
we always like to have friends. We have, as the quote Andor, as we said with Tom Bray, we have friends everywhere, and that's an important thing. And Angie Craig, by the way, I know she's big in agriculture. I just know that she had some involvement in some stuff that was important to you guys in regards to a bipartisan approach. That's really groovy. And like I said, we got a couple of rising stars over there. Like I'm still kind of stunned that Brian Babin is actually now I've always kind of dug him, but that he's actually a player over there now. Good God Almighty, I've been doing this too long. Well,
if you remember those ELD debates that were raging were like 2018, 2017. So he's been around quite a while, believe it or not. And now he's a very senior, influential member of the committee. Not that he wasn't influential previously.
Yeah, but you're telling me, though, that 2017 and 2018 were a long time ago, and that's traumatizing for me.
In Congress, that's ages.
That's ages. Collin, that's it. We're done. We're done with our first edition of Washington Trucking Week on the new format, brother. And I think we acquitted ourselves okay. I love you, brother. It's great to have you back. And tell everybody over there, but just don't tell Jay I said hello. Everybody else tell hello, but don't tell Grimes I said hello. It hurts his heart because when he thinks of me, he thinks of the Orioles, and it just breaks his heart. Get out of here. Love you, man.
All right, thank you. Have a good one.
You too. Washington Trucking Week is now on Thursdays here on Road Gang Radio. #Road Gang Radio. #The Resistance. #Big Fat Roger That.